there is a peace that does not come from circumstances changing, but from knowing you are not facing them alone. That peace is available to you right now, not because everything is resolved, but because God is present. You do not need to fix anything in this moment. You do not need to prepare for what comes next. You do not need to carry what feels heavy. This time is for stillness, for rest, and for quiet trust. God is not waiting for you to become calm before He draws near. He is already near. He is already here. His presence does not depend on your emotions, your clarity, or your strength. If your mind feels busy, allow it to slow gently. If your body feels tense, allow it to soften gradually. There is no rush. Peace does not need speed. Rest does not need effort. You may have carried many responsibilities without pause. You may have stayed strong for others while feeling tired inside. God sees that. He honors it. But now you are allowed to rest. You are allowed to stop striving, allowed to stop proving, allowed to stop holding everything together. God is holding what you release. There are moments in life when strength is not loud, when faith is not bold, when trust is quiet and unseen. God values that kind of faith deeply. He does not measure devotion by volume or visibility. Sometimes faith is simply staying. Sometimes faith is simply breathing. Sometimes faith is simply resting in His presence. If you have felt overwhelmed, you do not need to fight that feeling. If you have felt uncertain, you do not need to hide it. God meets you where you are, not where you think you should be. There are questions you may not have answers to yet, paths that feel unclear, outcomes that feel uncertain. God is not unsettled by what feels unsettled to you. He is steady. You do not need to understand everything to be at peace. You do not need clarity to trust. You do not need certainty to rest. God is already working in ways you cannot see. If your thoughts drift, let them drift. If they return, let them return gently. There is no need to control the mind. This moment is not about discipline. It is about presence. God's presence does not demand attention. It offers safety. There may be parts of your heart that feel tired, guarded, or worn. God does not pressure those places. He approaches them with gentleness. Healing does not come through force. It comes through care. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not failing. You are human, and God understands that completely. There are seasons when life feels quiet on the outside but heavy on the inside. Seasons when nothing dramatic is happening, but endurance is required. God sees those seasons. He remains present through them. Nothing you carry is invisible to Him. If your breathing begins to slow, allow it. If your body grows heavy, allow it. Rest is not weakness. It is restoration. God does not rush restoration. Scripture reminds us that God gives peace that surpasses understanding. Peace that does not depend on explanation. Peace that does not require circumstances to change. That peace is settling here. You do not need to chase it. You do not need to create it. You only need to remain. This time is safe. This stillness is safe. This quiet is safe. God is near. There are days when the weight you feel does not come from one single burden, but from carrying many small things for a long time. Responsibilities that never fully leave your mind. Thoughts that return even when you try to rest. Expectations that feel constant. God understands that kind of exhaustion. You were never meant to live in the state of constant alertness. You were not designed to always be prepared for the next problem, the next decision, the next challenge. There are moments meant for rest, and this is one of them. You are allowed to pause. If your heart feels tired, let it be tired. If your thoughts feel full, allow them to slow. God is not disappointed by your weariness. He responds to it with care. There is a difference between giving up and letting go. Letting go is not weakness. It is trust. Trust that God is capable of holding what you release. You do not need to hold every outcome together. You do not need to manage every possibility. You do not need to prepare for every future moment. God is already present in what is ahead of you. There may be situations in your life that feel unresolved, conversations that never happened, questions that remain unanswered, paths that feel uncertain. God is not unsettled by what feels unsettled to you. He is steady. You are not required to solve your life tonight. If your mind keeps moving forward into tomorrow, gently guide it back to now. Tomorrow will come when it comes. God will be there when it does. This moment is for rest. God does not measure your worth by productivity. He does not define your value by output. He does not judge your faith by how much you accomplish. Your worth is not something you perform. Your value is not something you earn. Your peace is not something you achieve. These are gifts. You may have learned to survive by staying strong, staying busy, staying ready. Over time, that kind of survival becomes exhausting. God does not ask you to live in survival mode. He invites you into trust. Trust that you are not alone. Trust that you are not forgotten. Trust that you are not carrying everything by yourself. There is a quiet kind of faith that exists in rest. Faith that does not speak loudly. Faith that does not announce itself. Faith that simply remains. God honors that faith. If disappointment has shaped parts of your heart, God understands. If hope has felt fragile, God is gentle with that too. He does not rush healing. He does not force restoration. He allows it to grow. Healing unfolds slowly. Peace settles gradually. Strength rebuilds quietly. You do not need to monitor the process. God is faithful whether you feel it or not. There are times when silence feels uncomfortable because it leaves space for thoughts to surface. But silence is also where peace is formed. It is where the noise fades and presence becomes clear. You do not need to fill this space. You do not need to control it. You do not need to guide it. God is already here. If your body feels heavy, allow it to rest. If your breathing feels slower, let it remain slow. Nothing needs to be changed. You are safe in this stillness. Scripture tells us that God is close to the weary. He does not distance himself from tired hearts. He draws near to them. Even now, God is restoring what has been worn down. He is renewing what has been drained. He is steadying what has been unsettled. You may not feel dramatic change, and that is okay. Peace often begins quietly. It grows without announcement. You are allowed to rest without guilt, allowed to pause without explanation, allowed to stop striving. God is not asking you to be more than human. There is nothing fragile about slowing down. Stillness is not weakness. It is trust. Remain here. Let go of effort. Allow calm to continue. God is near. There are moments when life feels steady on the outside but uncertain on the inside. When routines continue, responsibilities remain, and everything looks normal, yet your heart feels tired, restless, or heavy. God understands that quiet struggle. Not every burden announces itself. Some burdens settle slowly, unnoticed at first, growing heavier over time. God sees those burdens even when others do not. You do not need to minimize what you carry. There may be parts of your life where you feel unsure, waiting for clarity, waiting for direction, waiting for direction, waiting for change. God is not absent in waiting seasons. He is present within them. Waiting is not wasted time. Waiting is not failure. Waiting is not being left behind. It is a space where trust grows. If you feel pressure to move faster, to do more, to figure things out sooner, allow that pressure to release. God is not rushing you. He works patiently, carefully, and intentionally. You are allowed to move slowly. There are things forming in your life that you cannot yet see. Connections being made, doors being prepared, paths being shaped quietly. God is already at work in what feels unclear. You do not need to see the whole picture to trust the one who holds it. If your mind begins to search for certainty, gently allow it to rest. Certainty is not required for peace. Control is not required for safety. God is steady even when life feels unpredictable. You may have spent time questioning your decisions, your timing, your direction. God does not define you by your doubts. He meets you within them. Faith is not the absence of questions. Faith is the presence of trust. You are not required to have perfect confidence. You are not required to feel strong. You are not required to feel strong. God is enough, even when you feel unsure. There are seasons when you give more than you receive, seasons when you support others while feeling unsupported yourself. God sees that sacrifice. He honors that endurance. You are not invisible to Him. If you have been carrying disappointment quietly, God understands. If hope has felt fragile, He is gentle with that too. He does not demand quick healing. He allows space for restoration. Healing grows in quiet. Peace grows in stillness. Strength grows in rest. You do not need to push the process. God is not asking you to improve yourself tonight. He is offering you rest. If your thoughts slow, allow them to slow. If your body relaxes, allow it to relax. Nothing needs to be managed here. You are not responsible for maintaining peace. You are not responsible for sustaining calm. You are not responsible for holding everything together. God is holding what you release. Scripture reminds us that God gives rest to those He loves, not rushed rest, not forced rest, safe rest. This moment is safe. You may feel the quiet growing deeper, the stillness becoming more noticeable, the tension easing. These are signs of rest taking hold. You do not need to guide it. God is present in the silence. God is present in the stillness. God is present in the quiet. Nothing is required of you here. Remain here. Let go of effort. Allow peace to continue. God is near. There are seasons when you give so much of yourself that you forget what it feels like to simply receive. Seasons where your energy goes outward, to responsibilities, to people, to expectations, and very little comes back in. God understands that kind of depletion. You were not created to live in a constant state of output. You were created for relationship, for rest, for renewal, for peace. God does not demand endless strength from you. He supplies strength to you. If you have felt emotionally tired, that fatigue is seen. If you have felt mentally drained, that exhaustion is understood. God does not ask you to push through this moment. He invites you to pause within it. There is no urgency here. You do not need to prove your faith. You do not need to demonstrate your strength. You do not need to perform your trust. God knows your heart without display. Sometimes the bravest thing is not moving forward, but slowing down, not speaking, but resting, not striving, but releasing. God honors stillness. There are thoughts that may return again and again, reminders of unfinished tasks, unresolved situations, or unanswered questions. You do not need to engage them tonight. They can wait. God is already aware of them. You are not responsible for carrying every outcome. There may be pressure you feel to stay prepared, to stay ahead, to stay in control. God does not ask you to live that way. He asks you to trust that He is present in what you cannot manage. Trust grows when effort stops. If your heart feels guarded, allow it to soften gently. Not all at once, not forcefully, just enough to feel a little more space, a little more ease. God works patiently. There are layers to healing. Some are emotional, some are mental, some are spiritual. God moves through all of them with care. He does not rush restoration. You do not need to hurry peace. There are parts of your life that feel fragile, areas that feel uncertain, places where confidence feels thin. God is not threatened by fragility. He meets it with gentleness. You do not have to be unshakable to be held by God. If your body begins to feel heavier, allow it. If your thoughts begin to slow, let them slow. This is not weakness. This is rest beginning to take hold. God's presence does not depend on your awareness of it. He remains near even when you grow quiet. You are not alone in this moment. You are not alone in your thoughts. You are not alone in your waiting. God remains present. There are things unfolding in your life that you cannot yet see. Growth happening quietly, change forming slowly. God is already at work in what feels still. You do not need to monitor the process. You do not need to track progress. You do not need to measure change. God is faithful whether you feel it or not. If worries arise, acknowledge them gently and release them. Worry does not need to be solved tonight. God has already accounted for what concerns you. This time is safe. There is no demand placed on you here, no expectation to improve, no requirement to produce, only permission to rest. Remain here. Let go of effort. Allow calm to continue. God is steady. God is faithful. God is near. There are moments when rest feels unfamiliar because you have lived in motion for so long, when stillness feels strange because you are used to staying busy, staying alert, staying prepared. God understands that transition. Rest is something the heart has to learn again. You may have learned to keep moving through discomfort, to work through exhaustion, to function through stress. God does not condemn that survival. He understands it, but He also invites you into something gentler. You were not created to live in constant tension. If your thoughts feel quieter than usual, allow them to be quiet. If your mind feels slower, let it slow. There is nothing wrong with that. This is what rest feels like when it begins to settle. God does not rush this process. There are parts of you that have been tired for a long time, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. God sees that deep weariness. He does not overlook it. Sometimes the exhaustion we carry is invisible to others. It does not show on the outside, but it weighs heavily inside. God sees that weight clearly. You are not weak for feeling tired. You are not broken for needing rest. You are not failing for slowing down. You are human, and God understands that fully. If you feel resistance to rest, notice it gently. Sometimes we resist rest because we fear losing control. But rest is not losing control. It is trusting God with what you release. Trust grows in stillness. There are seasons when you have carried responsibility for a long time without relief. God does not ignore those seasons. He remains present through them. You are not forgotten in endurance. You are not overlooked in patience. You are not invisible in faithfulness. God remains attentive. There may be moments in your life where you wondered if God was working at all, seasons where progress felt slow, change felt distant, answers felt delayed. God was present in those seasons, even when you could not see movement. Not all growth is visible. Not all healing is dramatic. Not all restoration is loud. Much of God's work happens quietly. If your heart feels guarded, allow it to rest without pressure. God does not demand openness. He offers safety. Safety allows the heart to soften naturally. You may feel peace beginning to form without effort. Not forced calm, not controlled stillness, but gentle quiet. That peace is God's presence. You do not need to search for him. You do not need to call him closer. He is already near. This moment does not require words. It does not require words. It does not require action. It only requires presence. God is not waiting for you to change. He is simply with you. If you feel heaviness in your body, allow it. If you feel lightness in your mind, allow that too. Rest has many forms. There is nothing to manage here, nothing to perform, nothing to maintain, only permission to remain. Let this quiet continue. Let this stillness deepen. Let this calm grow naturally. God is steady. God is faithful. God is patient. There is a quiet place within the soul that only God can reach, not with noise, not with pressure, not with force, but with presence. This is that place, a space where striving stops and trust begins, where effort fades and peace takes root. You do not have to arrive here perfectly. You do not have to feel calm to be here. You do not have to prepare yourself for God's presence. He meets you as you are, not as you think you should be. There are layers of tiredness that go deeper than the body, weariness that settles in the mind, fatigue that lingers in the heart, exhaustion that does not come from one hard day but from many long seasons. God understands that kind of weariness fully. You were not created to live under constant weight. You were created for peace. You were created for connection. You were created for rest. Rest is not something you earn after doing enough. It is something God offers because you are human. If you have been carrying responsibilities without relief, God sees that burden. If you have been strong for others while feeling weak inside, God knows that tension. If you have continued forward while feeling depleted, God honors that endurance. Nothing you have carried has been invisible to him. There are seasons in life where survival becomes routine, where you adapt, endure, and continue without pause. Over time, that survival becomes exhausting. God does not condemn that survival. He understands it, but he does not want you to remain there. He invites you into something gentler. If your heart feels guarded, God is patient. If your mind feels restless, God is gentle. If your spirit feels tired, God is near. You do not need to defend yourself in his presence. You do not need to protect yourself from him. You do not need to perform peace. He offers it freely. There are thoughts you have carried that no one else knows, worries you have held quietly, fears you have never spoken. God already knows them all. He is not overwhelmed by any of them. Nothing in your mind is too heavy for him. Nothing in your heart is too complicated for him. Nothing in your life is too broken for his care. You are safe with God. There are times when your faith feels strong and times when it feels thin. God does not change between those moments. He does not draw closer when you feel confident and step away when you feel uncertain. He remains constant. You are not loved more on good days. You are not loved less on hard days. You are loved fully, always. If your thoughts drift toward the future, gently let them rest. The future does not need your attention tonight. God is already present there. If your mind returns to the past, allow it to soften. What has already happened does not need to be carried into this moment. God has already walked with you through it. Tonight is for release. Release the need to understand. Release the need to prepare. Release the need to control. God is holding what you let go. There are parts of your life that feel unfinished, situations that feel unresolved, questions that feel unanswered. God is not unsettled by what feels unsettled to you. He is steady. You do not need to rush clarity. You do not need to force direction. You do not need to demand answers. God's timing is not chaotic. God's plan is not rushed. God's care is not fragile. If your body feels heavy, allow it. If your breathing slows, let it slow. If your mind quiets, let it quiet. These are signs of rest beginning to take hold. You do not need to manage this moment. You do not need to guide this peace. You do not need to shape this stillness. God is already present within it. Scripture reminds us that God restores the weary and strengthens the faint, not through pressure, but through peace, not through force, but through presence. Restoration often happens quietly. Renewal often happens gently. Healing often happens slowly. You do not need to track the process. Even now, something within you is easing. Even now, tension is releasing. Even now, peace is settling. You may not feel dramatic change, and that is okay. God's work is often subtle. It grows beneath the surface. There are burdens leaving your spirit that you may not even notice. There are fears loosening their grip quietly. There are worries losing their hold gently. God is faithful in ways you cannot measure. You are not responsible for holding everything together. You are not responsible for carrying the weight of tomorrow. You are not responsible for maintaining peace. God is responsible for what you release. You are allowed to rest without guilt, allowed to pause without explanation, allowed to be still without pressure. This moment is safe. This stillness is safe. This quiet is safe. God is present. Remain here. Let go of effort. Allow calm to deepen. God is steady. God is faithful. God is near. There is a deep kind of rest that happens when the soul no longer feels the need to stay guarded, when the heart no longer feels the pressure to stay strong, when the mind no longer feels responsible for keeping everything together. That rest does not come from circumstances changing. It comes from trust. Trust that God is present even when things feel unfinished. Trust that God is working even when you cannot see progress. Trust that God is near even when everything feels quiet. You do not need to force yourself into peace. Peace grows naturally when resistance fades. There are parts of your life that have required endurance rather than excitement, faithfulness rather than clarity, patience rather than answers. God sees those seasons clearly. He honors what you have carried. Sometimes the hardest seasons are not marked by crisis, but by consistency. The long days, the repeated responsibilities, the quiet perseverance. God does not overlook those moments. He is present in them. You are not forgotten in routine. You are not invisible in consistency. You are not unseen in quiet faithfulness. God remains attentive. There may be times when you wonder if your prayers matter, if your faith is enough, or if your efforts mean anything. God assures you that nothing offered in faith is wasted, nothing given in trust is lost. Even the prayers you forgot you prayed still matter. Even the hopes you stopped speaking still matter. Even the faith you carried quietly still matters. God remembers what you release. If your thoughts begin to slow, allow them to slow. If your awareness feels softer, let it remain soft. You do not need to sharpen your focus. This moment is not about attention. It is about presence. There are parts of the heart that only heal in stillness, not through analysis, not through effort, but through rest. God works in that stillness. If you have carried emotional tension without noticing it, allow it to release. Not all at once, not forcefully, just gently, gradually, naturally. Healing does not hurry. Rest does not demand effort. God is patient. There may be things you wish you could change, fix, or resolve. God understands that desire. But tonight is not for fixing. Tonight is for resting. God is already working in the places you cannot reach. You do not need to manage your healing. You do not need to supervise your growth. You do not need to control your future. God is already present in all of it. There is safety in letting go, safety in slowing down, safety in trusting God with what feels uncertain. Nothing you release will fall beyond His care. Nothing you set down will be lost. Nothing you surrender will be forgotten. God holds what you cannot. You may notice your body becoming heavier, your breathing slowing, your awareness softening. These are signs of rest settling into the nervous system. This is how peace enters the body. God designed you for this kind of rest. You do not need to remain alert. You do not need to stay guarded. You do not need to stay prepared. This moment is safe. There is no demand placed on you here. No pressure to improve. No expectation to perform. Only permission to remain. God is steady. God is present. God is faithful. Let this quiet continue. There is a calm that comes when the heart no longer feels the need to defend itself, when the soul no longer feels pressure to prove anything, when the mind no longer feels responsible for holding everything together. That calm grows naturally when you allow God to carry what you release. You were never meant to be the foundation for your own peace. You were never meant to sustain yourself alone. You were never meant to hold every weight by yourself. God is the foundation you rest on. If you feel a sense of quiet forming within you, allow it to remain. If you feel stillness growing, let it grow. There is nothing to interrupt here, nothing to manage, nothing to control. There are parts of your life that have required more endurance than joy, more patience than clarity, more faith than certainty. God sees those seasons clearly. He does not minimize them. He does not overlook them. You are not unseen in your waiting. You are not forgotten in your patience. You are not overlooked in your endurance. God remains present through it all. If your mind tries to return to worry, gently guide it back to rest. If your thoughts drift, let them drift. This moment does not require focus. It only requires presence. There is a peace that forms when striving stops. There is a rest that grows when pressure fades. There is a calm that settles when trust takes root. God is nurturing that calm within you now. Nothing needs to change for peace to exist. Nothing needs to improve for rest to remain. Nothing needs to resolve for stillness to stay. This moment is complete as it is. You are safe here. You are held here. You are cared for here. God is present. There is a deep safety in knowing you do not have to hold everything together. In knowing you are not the source of your own peace. In knowing you are not responsible for sustaining your own strength. God is the one who carries you. You do not need to stay alert here. You do not need to remain guarded. You do not need to stay prepared. This moment is not asking for effort. If your awareness feels softer, allow it. If your thoughts feel quieter, let them remain quiet. There is nothing to manage, nothing to guide, nothing to control. God is already present in this stillness. Rest is not something you create. It is something you receive. Trust is not something you force. It is something that grows when you release. Peace is not something you chase. It is something that settles when striving stops. God is steady. God is faithful. God is near. As this time comes to a close, there is nothing more you need to do. You have given enough for today. You have carried enough. And now you are allowed to rest without effort, without pressure, and without concern. God is not asking you to prepare for tomorrow. He is simply present with you now. The same God who has walked with you through every season of your life will continue to watch over you as you rest. Nothing you release in this moment will be lost. Nothing you set down will fall beyond His care. You do not need to stay alert. You do not need to hold your thoughts together. You do not need to remain strong. God is strong for you. If sleep comes, allow it. If quiet wakefulness remains, allow that too. There is no pressure here, only peace. You are safe. You are held. You are not alone. Rest now, knowing that God remains near.